She said it like she was ordering takeout. No inflection, no heat, just a flatline declaration, like she'd been saving that sentence for a moment boring enough to weaponize it. I was rinsing a coffee cup. The water was still running when I set the mug down in the sink and turned around to face her. "My life would be easier without you," she repeated, slower this time, just in case I missed the decapitation the first time. I didn't throw the cup. I didn't raise my voice. I looked at her, not with anger, but with an odd sort of pity, like watching someone light a match without realizing they're standing in gasoline. I grabbed my keys, my wallet, and the small black envelope I had taped beneath the hallway console table 2 years ago. Walked out. She didn't follow. I got in my car and pulled away without checking the rearview. It was 8:42 a.m. By 8:57, the house Wi-Fi had been reset. The printer in the upstairs office quietly received a new password sheet. My name disappeared from our family Apple account. The Nest app logged her out, and the garage door failed to open when she tried to leave for her yoga class. That's when she started calling. She probably assumed this was some sort of overreaction, a midlife man tantrum. I could almost hear her scoffing to herself. He'll be back by lunch. What she didn't know, what she never bothered to consider, is that I'd been building a quiet exit plan for 18 months. Not because I was certain she'd cheat, not because I'd found some smoking gun, but because I had grown tired of waiting for the inevitable punchline to the bad joke that had become our marriage. You see, when a woman tells you she wishes you weren't in her life, she assumes you'll beg to stay in it. She imagines guilt, tears, desperate attempts to prove your worth. She expects weakness. She doesn't expect logistics. More than 97% of the people listening right now aren't subscribed, and if you're one of them, it takes a second, but it helps the team here more than you think. Just hit that button. Alright, back to her unraveling. The funny part? I'd already signed the separation documents a year earlier. Undated, notarized, just waiting in a fireproof lockbox at my office. My lawyer, Craig, had the time-stamped recordings of our financial meetings. He had copies of her snide little jokes about asset division at dinner parties. He had everything I needed. I wasn't planning to use it. Until that morning. At 9:12 a.m., I activated the quiet lockdown. That's what I labeled the checklist. The spreadsheet was absurdly detailed. Bank account rerouting. Revocation of shared access. Cloud permissions reset. Apple ID alias deletion. Even the VIN tracking for the second car, hers, was already switched out of my name. She hadn't noticed the insurance switch the month before. By 9:28 a.m., her Spotify playlist started skipping tracks. That's not a metaphor. I literally deleted her access from the family plan. Petty? Sure. But symbolic. The house was quiet, I'm sure. But her mind? I could practically feel the static of it building from 3 miles away. She wasn't mad because I left. She was mad because I didn't slam the door. No shouting match. No closure speech. Just silence. And the silence terrified her. She texted me around 10:03. "So you're not speaking now?" Real mature. I didn't respond. At 10:31, a second text. "This is ridiculous. You're being paranoid again. You always make things about you." The word again made me laugh. Loud enough that a jogger on the sidewalk turned to look at me like I was a lunatic. Maybe I was. But at least I wasn't the fool anymore. I didn't drive far that morning. I went to the lake, sat by the water and watched a father try to teach his kid how to skip stones. It was calm, deliberate, methodical, just like what I was doing. Meanwhile, back at the house, the thermostat started acting up. The temperature reset every hour, and she couldn't figure out why. I'd scheduled random overrides, nothing dangerous, just enough to make her wonder if the house was glitching. She tried calling again at 11:15, straight to voicemail, and when she finally opened the fridge to grab her almond milk, she found the label on the shelf had been peeled off and replaced. Just one word in block letters. Removed. Not the milk. Me. The rest of her day would unravel slowly. I made sure of it. Like a sweater pulled by a single thread. A thread she thought she'd cut with one sentence in a kitchen. But the thing about threads? Pull enough of them and the whole pattern changes. She called once. Straight to voicemail. Called again and again, same. She stared at the screen like it owed her an explanation. Then she opened the banking app and tapped our joint account. Denied. Just like that. Incorrect credentials. She tried again, slower this time, as if maybe her thumbs had betrayed her. Still denied. That was when the itch started, deep in her chest, like a cough that won't come out. She walked to the garage and tapped her fingerprint to the keypad. Nothing. Tried the code we've used since we bought the place. Denied. The little red LED blinked like a smirk. She pressed harder. Tried my fingerprint. Forgot, of course, that I'd never added mine. Inside, the thermostat blinked erratically. The guest bedroom lights were on motion sensors set to someone else's pattern. She hadn't noticed that when she walked past earlier. The house felt the same but acted differently, as if it no longer recognized her. She paced back to the kitchen and opened the drawer where we kept the manuals, passwords, and just-in-case documents. But the file was missing. In its place, a small slip of paper taped to the bottom. Request access. No name, no contact info, just that. She let out a laugh that sounded more like a cough. "He's being dramatic," she muttered. But there was no one to hear her. Not even the dog. He'd been rehomed 6 months ago after one too many chewed heels and vet bills. Her voice bounced off the walls like it didn't belong here anymore. She opened the laptop, ready to reset the network. Admin login failed. Tried the default one we always used, denied. Even the Wi-Fi network name had changed. It used to be LangfordNet. Now it was just a string of numbers. She didn't recognize the router interface. He must have installed a new one. When? How long had this been building? She grabbed the home phone, landline, her emergency backup for calls when her cell dies. No dial tone. She stared at the receiver like it had betrayed her personally. Tried texting his brother. No response. Called her sister. Voicemail. Left a panicked message that started casual and spiraled midway through. "Hey, it's nothing serious. Just weird stuff with the house, and I think maybe he's like overreacting or something. I don't know, call me." Then she sat at the dining table. The one she once threatened to sell because it was too bulky and made the space feel heavy. She stared at the centerpiece she'd bought for $130 from that home goods boutique he hated. The silence around her wasn't peace, it was vacancy. It wasn't that he had stormed off. It was that he had evaporated. And here's what really got to her. There was no anger in it. No trail of destruction. Just a series of locked doors, unanswered logins, and absent presence. She started realizing this wasn't a tantrum. This was paperwork-level precision. She checked our shared Google Calendar. His events? Gone. Just white space. Her hair appointment next week still there. So was the dinner she scheduled with her high school friend, the one he always said had predator eyes. That's when the mirror effect hit her. He hadn't deleted himself from the marriage. He'd deleted the marriage from him. She stood up too fast and knocked over her lemon water. It spread across the marble like a slow accusation. And that creeping itch in her chest? It had grown teeth. She tried to act normal. Told herself she still had leverage. She still had the house. Still had the car. Still had their shared history, their memories. Until she opened the silverware drawer and realized every single one of the steak knives was gone. Not missing, replaced. Cheap plastic ones from some dollar store set. That's when she whispered aloud, like a woman trying to wake from a dream. "What the hell is he doing?" And somewhere miles away I bet he smiled. Not because she was in pain. Because for the first time in years, she was finally paying attention. The call from the credit card company came while she was halfway through a glass of wine, pacing the living room in socks, the TV muted on a paused cooking show she wasn't watching. "We're just confirming the cancellation request on the joint platinum account ending in 3084. The woman chirped. "Effective immediately." "I didn't cancel anything," she snapped. "Right, ma'am," the voice replied, overly polite. But the primary account holder submitted the closure with full documentation, digital signature, ID verification, and confirmation from your financial institution. "We just need you to verify you're aware." She hung up without answering, marched to the kitchen, nearly tripping over the rug, grabbed her phone and opened the banking app again. Still locked out. A voicemail notification blinked. "Insurance company." She tapped play. "Hi, this is Julie from Horizon Mutual. We're reaching out to confirm recent changes to the home and auto policy. It looks like the joint policy is being restructured into a single holder format under a legal clause marked marital split. We'll need documentation confirming the change, divorce filing, separation agreement, anything you can provide within 30 days. Thank you." She stood frozen, not out of sadness. She wasn't there yet. Just confusion, static, the house, the damn house. She sprinted to the office, threw open the filing cabinet where they kept mortgage statements. Last month's statement showed the usual balance. She opened the new one that arrived a few days ago, one she hadn't bothered to check. She stared at it. Balance, $0. Account, closed. Her name was still on the deed, sure. But the account tied to it? Paid off and wiped. By whom? She felt the edges of her control fray, like fabric stretched too thin. So she did what people do when they don't know what else to do. She dialed her sister. "Hey!" she said, voice trembling beneath an artificial cheer. "Weird question. If someone prepaid a mortgage out of nowhere, what does that mean legally?" Pause. "You okay?" Yeah, I'm just wondering. Hypothetically. Who prepaid what? No one. Just forget it. Her sister's voice turned flat. Is this about him again? She hung up. Next up, her lawyer. Or rather, the lawyer she used during that one brief trial separation 4 years ago, when she thought she might want to find herself in an Airbnb 2 cities over. Same man. Same office. But his receptionist informed her he no longer handled domestic cases. "You're welcome to send an email," the woman added. She did. It bounced back. Out of office indefinitely. She poured another glass of wine. And then, in a moment she'd deny later, she called her ex-boyfriend from college. The one she still kept in her phone as T. Just the letter. Just in case. He answered on the third ring. "Wow," he said, laughing. "How long's it been? 10 years? 12, she whispered. There was a pause. "You okay?" he asked, voice low, cautious. She wanted to say yes. Wanted to slide into the flirty banter they used to use, back when life was easier, when she felt wanted. But her throat locked. "I think I did something stupid," she muttered. He sighed. "You married that guy, didn't you?" She closed her eyes. "I think he just erased me." Another pause. Then, cold steel in his voice. Then maybe he finally listened. Click. That one stung more than she admitted. Back at the kitchen table, she stared at her hands. Trembling. Pale. This wasn't about a fight. This wasn't about pride. This was about the fact that the floor beneath her, financially, legally, emotionally, wasn't cracking. It was being lifted out from under her like a trapdoor. The insurance, the mortgage, the joint accounts, every tether that had kept them tied together had been snipped in advance. Quietly, methodically, like someone severing cables from a sinking ship. And yet the furniture was still here. The walls still painted the color she chose. The faint smell of his cologne still lingering on the hallway rug he used to vacuum on Sundays. The house stood, but her footing didn't. She started to cry. Not loudly, not performatively, just a silent leak of pressure she couldn't contain anymore. Then she wiped her face and muttered to herself. He wants a war? Fine. But even she knew this wasn't a war. It was a silent evacuation. And he was already gone. She waited until morning, telling herself sleep would give her perspective, clarity, a reset. Instead, she woke to silence. The kind of thick, pressing quiet that made even the hum of the fridge feel confrontational. No texts, no calls, not even a passive-aggressive email. She put on her fix this sweater, navy, oversized, meant to look casual but calculated. She sat on the couch and stared at the last photo of him she could find. A shot of him at a beach, laughing, holding their niece. Except now it was pixelated, blurry, like someone had degraded the file. She tapped on their shared Google Photos folder. Empty. All their vacation albums. Gone. Her panic flared, not emotional, not about the loss. It was the erasure. Methodical. Not in-the-moment revenge. This had taken time. Preparation. A kind of cruelty that felt too calm. She opened Facebook. He was gone. Not blocked. Deleted. Instagram. Nothing. LinkedIn. Still there but altered. The same job title, but the name was no longer his. He'd switched to initials. Profile photo blurred out. She clicked Contact Info. The only thing listed was a P.O. box address in Oregon. They didn't live in Oregon. She called his office. Receptionist transferred her to HR. "Hi, yes, I'm trying to reach. Sorry, he resigned yesterday. Effective immediately." "What?" "Submitted in writing. Confirmed identity. Asked to forward all legal documentation to his P.O. box. He requested not to be contacted." "You're telling me he left his job? And didn't tell me?" There was a pause. "I'm not at liberty to comment further, ma'am." Click. She sat back, phone still to her ear. Then she did something she hadn't done in years. She called one of his friends. The old college buddy who'd been best man at their wedding and gradually disappeared after a fight over vacation plans and an awkward incident involving tequila and blunt honesty. No answer. Straight to voicemail. She tried another one. Same. She opened Messenger. All the group chats with their old couple friend circle? She was no longer a member. Not banned. Removed. Entire threads gone. When she searched the name of one of the wives, the profile didn't come up. She wasn't just being blocked. She was being deleted. She grabbed her laptop, breathing too fast now, and typed his full name into every people search service she could find. Nothing current. A couple of old listings, one for their former address, and a business registration that had been dissolved over a year ago. She clicked through her email folders, found an old airline confirmation under his name, opened the account portal. Password denied. Tried password reset. Security question. First place we kissed. She knew the answer. Typed it in. Access denied. She tried again. Denied. She reached for her wine. Then remembered it was 9:37 in the morning. The dread wasn't even dramatic anymore. It was clinical. A kind of quiet horror that settles in when you realize the only thing worse than someone leaving is someone leaving cleanly. No trace. No clues. Just gaps. Even their shared Amazon Prime account had been stripped. All the shared watch lists gone. Her Kindle suddenly showed 0 books. She checked the billing page. Membership not found. She opened a drawer and stared at their wedding photo. Picked it up. Flipped it over. There used to be a note scribbled in pencil. His handwriting. Now it was blank, erased clean. That was the final crack. She marched to the bedroom closet, ripped the door open, and stared. His side? Empty. Hangers swinging slightly, as if someone had just walked away seconds before. And on the shelf where his old watch box used to be, sat a single Polaroid. One she hadn't seen in years. It was of her. At a party. Laughing. Holding a glass of wine. Alone. On the back, in ink, I learned to vanish while standing next to you. She dropped it like it burned. Her heart pounded against her ribs, not from loss, but from the realization that she was months, maybe years behind him in this game. And the worst part? He never ran. He just prepared. The apartment was above a bike shop that closed every day at 6 p.m. sharp. No neon signs. No buzzer. Just a small steel door painted the same color as the bricks around it. Like it was hiding in plain sight. You wouldn't look twice walking by, and that's exactly why he chose it. The landlord, a gruff widow named Iris, didn't ask questions. Cash deposits. No pets. No noise complaints. Perfect. Inside, the place was Spartan. A mattress on the floor, a wooden desk with a laptop older than his marriage, and a bookshelf filled not with memories, but with manuals, supply chain, transportation systems, zoning codes. Next to them, a legal pad with a list he updated every night. Licenses to renew. Contacts to shift. Dead ends to reopen. He had no car. Took buses. Sometimes biked. Paid in cash whenever possible. Didn't use his old phone. Didn't use any phone for the first 6 months. Just a burner for emergencies. No Spotify, no Instagram, no Venmo. Ghost protocols. He went by Micah Torres now. The name wasn't random. It was from an old friend who'd passed away young. No digital trail, no relatives. A name he could wear like armor. It wasn't forged. It was legally changed 2 years ago. Quietly. Preemptively. He filed the paperwork during a solo trip to Utah under the pretense of a hiking retreat. She never asked what trail he hiked. She just posted about finally getting some space from each other, like it was a cute couple's boundary exercise. During the day, he studied. Took community college classes in logistics, data analytics, and corporate compliance. He never mentioned his old degree. Never referenced the life where he once managed mid-size warehousing contracts and debated lease clauses over steak dinners with third-tier executives. That man didn't exist anymore. At night, he swept floors at a bar 2 towns over. Nobody asked about his past. He didn't drink. He just watched, cleaned, listened, saved. And slowly, piece by piece, he built options. By the end of the first year, he had enough to file an LLC under his new name. By the end of the second, he was offering consulting packages to mom-and-pop trucking operations trying to optimize routes and cut costs. Nothing flashy. No website. Word of mouth only. A few contracts. A few $1,000s. Enough to fund the next phase. He didn't miss his old life. Not really. He missed silence. He missed stillness, and in exile he found both. He kept one reminder of the past, tucked away in the drawer beneath his socks. A receipt from a steakhouse they used to visit every anniversary. It was for a $214 dinner, dated 4 years ago, with a note he'd scribbled on the back. She never noticed I paid with my own card. That had been the beginning of his untying. And yet, this reinvention wasn't born out of bitterness. It wasn't a tantrum. It was science. A controlled demolition. He created a new email, mentors_consulting@protonmail, used encrypted storage, paid a former law student to draft basic service contracts, used a friend of a friend to get referrals from out of state. Slowly, he grew. He made no waves, but his work was clean. He kept to himself, ate lentils and rice, didn't own a couch until year 2, watched lectures instead of movies, meditated instead of listening to podcasts. He was building not a comeback, but a second skin, one that couldn't be touched, guilt, or subpoenaed. And what did she have? A house she didn't own. A marriage she hadn't noticed had been dissected slowly, like nerve endings during surgery. Micah didn't hate her. He didn't need to. He simply became someone else, someone better. And if you were to ask him, on one of those quiet nights after he turned off the lamp, staring at the ceiling of that tiny apartment, whether he missed the life he left, he might pause, breathe, smile, and answer, "No, I miss me. And now, I'm getting him back." It was the dentist's office. One of those antiseptic little lobbies with too much light, fake greenery in gray pots, and a flat-screen TV looping muted cooking shows. She had arrived early out of habit. Her phone was dead, of course, and she had forgotten her charger in the car. Bored, she reached for one of the glossy business magazines stacked neatly on the table, thinking she might skim through photos of overpriced watches or clickbait finance advice dressed up in MBA language. The article caught her eye because of the headline. Small town, big moves. The logistics startup revitalizing regional freight. It wasn't the kind of thing she usually read, but the name of the town was familiar. Somewhere they passed through once during a weekend trip when the car broke down and they argued for 2 hours at a diner. Nostalgia by irritation. She flipped the page, and then her breath stopped. There he was, smiling, standing next to 2 other men in crisp button-downs, sleeves rolled up like good OL boys with Ivy League resumes. The caption read, Micah Torres, co-founder and operations director, Third Bridge Supply. Her hands shook. The magazine slipped from her fingers and landed with a flat slap on the tile floor. The receptionist glanced up but said nothing. She picked it back up, stared, blinked, looked again. It was him. Trim beard, glasses he never used to wear, leaner somehow, more focused, sharper. He didn't look like a man in hiding. He looked like a man becoming. The article was a puff piece, but it had enough meat to chew. Third Bridge was founded to fix a regional blind spot in freight optimization across underserved routes in the Midwest. They'd landed 2 municipal contracts, recently acquired by a larger firm out of Chicago, headquartered out of a refurbished warehouse near the rail lines. She read every word, twice. No mention of his previous life. No personal backstory. Just clean metrics and calm professionalism. She flipped back to the first page of the issue. Date. Last month. He hadn't just left. He'd won. The air around her felt thinner. Her body buzzed. Not in the empowering, "This is my turning point" way. In the spiraling, reality-slipping kind of way. Like she was being pulled downward into a realization she wasn't ready for. He hadn't burned their life down. He'd simply stepped away from it and built another one without her. She thought about the version of him she remembered. Quiet, agreeable, almost background noise in their marriage. The man who did laundry on Sundays, who fixed the sink without being asked, who left the room whenever she raised her voice. She had assumed that made him weak. It made him patient. She was the one who had said it. My life would be easier without you. And now here he was, co-founder of a company with revenue in the 7 figures by the sound of it. Building contracts, hiring people, getting featured in magazines. While she was scraping through the leftovers of a house she didn't fully own. Driving a car she hadn't realized was leased under a corporate umbrella until the insurance tried to renegotiate her premium. She swallowed hard, closed the magazine, picked it back up, stuffed it into her tote bag like a thief. The receptionist blinked. You can take that if you want, she offered. I'm good, she said, standing too fast. I just need some air. She stepped outside into the sun and leaned against the concrete wall. Her heart pounded. How long had he been building this? How long had he known she'd give him the out? The out he made look like her idea. She texted her sister. I just saw something insane. Call me when you can. No response. She stared at her own reflection in the window. For a moment, she didn't recognize the woman looking back. Face pale, pupils blown wide, one shoe slightly scuffed. The thought hit her like cold water down the back of her neck. She hadn't been divorced. She'd been replaced. And worse, by someone no longer interested in reminding her he existed. He didn't need revenge. He needed distance. And he had it. 3 states. 2 names. 1 purpose. To live a life where her opinion meant absolutely nothing. She didn't sleep the night before the flight. Not from guilt or nerves, but something worse. Disbelief turning into obsession. She couldn't stop staring at that magazine page, zooming in on his face like some grainy security footage of a man she once thought she understood. He wasn't just surviving. He was thriving. Her fingers trembled booking the ticket. One way. No suitcase. Just her purse and a hastily packed tote bag. She didn't tell anyone. No friends, no sister, not even the guy she occasionally texted when she needed ego validation. This wasn't a trip, it was a hunt. The city was smaller than she expected. Clean. Precise. Like someone had vacuumed the sidewalks. When the cab pulled up to the office building, she froze. It was exactly like the photo, modern, glass facade. The startup's minimalist logo above the entrance. Third Bridge Supply. She walked in like she belonged there. Heels clicking, lips painted just enough to say important without begging. She approached the receptionist, a young woman with sharp eyeliner and a sharper smile. Hi, I'm here to see Michael Torres, she said, fumbling over the fake name as if correcting a lie in front of a priest. The receptionist tilted her head slightly, the kind of calculated pause that tells you everything. Do you have an appointment? No, I'm his wife. Another pause. This one colder. The receptionist slowly reached under the desk, produced a laminated folder, and flipped it open like she was accessing some corporate threat protocol. Then, we were informed that should you ever appear, we're to follow Protocol D4. She blinked. What the hell does that mean? The receptionist didn't flinch. It means, we don't accept personal visitors, especially not unannounced. She fumbled in her purse, pulled out an old photo. Their anniversary dinner 3 years ago. Him in a blue blazer. Her with that ridiculous silk scarf she thought made her look French. She slid it across the counter. The receptionist didn't even glance down. We know who you are, ma'am. He's not available. Tell him I'm here, she snapped, pushing the photo closer. He already knows. The woman turned slightly, typing something on her keyboard, clearly ending the conversation. So she sat in the lobby, with nothing but that photo and a silence that felt like a padded cell. People came and went, employees in hoodies, investors in suits, interns in sneakers. No one acknowledged her. One guy looked at her wedding photo and muttered, "Yikes." Under his breath, she felt her face burn. She texted him. Once. I just want to talk. No response. 4:27 p.m. She repositioned herself near the elevator. Not blocking it, just visible. 4:58. The elevator pinged. And then there he was, stepping out. Suit tailored. Posture straighter. Clean-shaven with a touch of gray at the temples. No ring. He looked like a ghost that had figured out how to haunt the living without ever saying a word. She stood. He didn't stop. Didn't flinch. Didn't see her. She stepped into his path. Hey! He pivoted slightly. Walked past. Not around her. Not through her. Like she wasn't there. She followed. Micah, stop. He didn't. The receptionist met her eyes briefly. Shook her head once. A gesture like, don't do this. Not here. She turned back to him. But he was already halfway across the lobby, pulling out his phone, smiling faintly as he answered it. Something about a supplier contract. Casual, calm. Like she was nothing more than static on a broken radio. And that's when it hit her, the kind of humiliation that doesn't scream, it simmers. She had flown 3 states, burned through the last embers of her pride, just to become a footnote, a risk profile, a contingency in someone else's HR binder. He didn't block her. He pre-deleted her. And worst of all, he wasn't angry. He was done. It was a Tuesday morning when her new lawyer called. Not the one she used years ago for that temporary separation. He had stopped returning her calls after a politely cold conflict of interest email. This one was newer, younger, still eager to prove himself, and thus more thorough. He asked her to come in person. "There's a clause you missed," he said, his voice tightly controlled, like he was trying not to sound impressed. She showed up in a beige trench coat and oversized sunglasses, trying to look composed, expensive, untouchable. The effect wore off the second he laid the folder in front of her and flipped to the tab marked Addendum 12C. "I found this buried in a side file of the marital trust paperwork," he said. "It's a clause tied to the transfer of property interest in the event of, well, this." She leaned forward. The clause was titled Voluntary Emotional Severance. And there it was, in perfect legalese, not even trying to hide in fine print. In the event one party initiates verbal or written expressions of permanent emotional disassociation, including but not limited to phrases implying detachment, rejection, or severance of partnership, all assets bound to shared estate agreements shall default to individual partition. Leaseholds revert to original contractual holders. No contestation permitted unless fraud or coercion is proven. She blinked. Wait, what does that even mean?" she asked, eyebrows drawn tight. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. "It means when you wrote, quote, 'I'm emotionally checked out and you need to move on because my life would be easier without you,' in that email 3 years ago, it triggered the clause. Technically, it qualifies as voluntary emotional severance." She remembered the email. Vaguely. It was after an argument about vacation plans, something about Hawaii versus a lake cabin. She'd written it late at night after 2 glasses of wine and a self-righteous spiral. He never replied to it. She assumed he ignored it. He didn't. He filed it. She scanned further. "But I still have access to the house." "Yes," the lawyer said slowly. "You have access to the house, but not to the land beneath it." She looked up. "What the hell does that mean?" He pulled out another sheet. A land lease agreement. The land, it turned out, wasn't part of their jointly owned assets. Not anymore. It had been quietly removed from the marital trust 6 years ago, long before she ever thought anything was wrong. The leaseholder? Soulbridge Holdings LLC. She narrowed her eyes. "What is that?" He flipped the last page. "A private holding company, registered in Nevada. 2 silent partners. The primary owner is listed as..." He didn't have to finish. She stared at the name. Micah Torres. Her lips parted but no words came out. He had separated the foundation from the facade. She lived in a house, but the earth belonged to him, and through a clause she triggered. With her own damn words. The lawyer cleared his throat. "There's more. Soulbridge Holdings merged with Third Bridge Supply 3 months ago. Meaning, technically, your property sits on a corporate campus now. Not residential. You're considered a tenant." The room tilted slightly. "No," she muttered. "That can't be legal." "It is. You signed the amended mortgage refinancing documents 2 years ago. Page 12. You initialed next to it." She couldn't breathe. She mocked him for being quiet, for never fighting back. But all this time, while she laughed at his silence, he was engineering her irrelevance. Not revenge. Not malice. Just precision. A man who spent 5 years listening to her talk about how much better her life would be without him, and believed her. And the worst part? She knew how smart he was. She knew he read everything. She just never imagined he'd use that skill to write her out of the story. She stood abruptly. The chair scraped loud against the hardwood. "I want to fight it." The lawyer didn't move. "You can try." But every move he made was quiet, clean, documented. She walked out without another word. But her heel caught on the doorframe, just for a second. And for a moment, she stood there off balance, unable to move. And in that single stumble, she realized he had done to her life what she used to do to his sentences. Cut it off mid-thought. The gala was held at the tallest building in the city. Floor-to-ceiling glass, LED uplighting that made everything shimmer like champagne, and a lobby full of people who looked like their suits had tax write-offs. She arrived in a dress she hadn't worn since their anniversary 6 years ago, back when she still thought compliments were owed to her by default. She wasn't on the guest list. The woman at the check-in desk gave her a tight smile and a red visitor badge that screamed exactly what she now was. A relic without a seat. Inside, the ballroom was a rolling tide of laughter, clinking glasses, and polished ambition. She hovered near the back wall, pretending to study the event brochure while scanning the crowd. It took her 10 minutes to spot him. Micah, or Micah Torres, was center stage in a tailored charcoal suit, a blue pocket square folded neatly against his chest. He was standing next to the city's deputy mayor, smiling for a photo with the kind of relaxed posture only someone untouchable can pull off. She gripped her wine glass tighter. Then came the voice over the speakers. And now, please welcome the recipient of this year's Economic Visionary Award, Micah Torres, co-founder of Third Bridge Supply. Applause exploded like a wave crashing against her skin. She stared, frozen, as he stepped up to the mic. He didn't mention his past. Didn't nod to hardship. No humble beginnings monologue. Just clean, razor-sharp talk about revitalizing freight lanes, empowering underserved communities, and the mathematics of momentum. People leaned in when he spoke, listened like he mattered. She barely heard a word. After, she trailed behind the herd spilling out of the ballroom, slipping through the lobby shadows like a forgotten coat check ticket. She caught him at the valet line, phone in hand, nodding along to someone's business pitch. He was alone just long enough. "Micah," she said, stepping into his line of sight. He didn't flinch, just lowered his phone slowly, tucked it into his pocket, and turned. She was struck again by how different he looked. Not in appearance, though he'd clearly sharpened every edge, but in presence. Like he took up more space now, like the oxygen bent around him. "You really just walked away?" she asked, her voice thinner than she meant. He said nothing. She stepped closer. 15 minutes after I said those words, everything changed. There it was, the crack in her tone. She hadn't meant to sound wounded, but it slipped through, raw and shaking. A choked blend of guilt, confusion, and something she couldn't name. He looked at her for a long moment. Not angrily, not kindly, just unreadable. Like someone watching a movie they've already seen, knowing how it ends and feeling nothing about it. She tried again. "You didn't even give me a chance to take it back." Still nothing. Only the sound of tires screeching lightly as a black town car pulled to the curb. "Do you even care what happened to me?" she whispered. He glanced at the driver, gave a small nod, then turned back to her. "Not the way you mean," he said softly. Then he reached into his jacket, pulled out something folded, thin, precise, official, and handed it to her. She took it, fingers brushing his. Cold. He stepped into the car. No fanfare, no final glance. The door shut with a sound that felt like a verdict. She looked down at the paper in her hand, not yet unfolding it. Around her, the valet buzzed with motion, engines revving, people laughing. But her world had narrowed to the weight of that single page. And the way he'd stared at her like she was a headline from last year's news. Forgettable. She had asked for an easier life. She just hadn't expected to become a footnote in his better one. She stood there long after the black car had disappeared into the night traffic, gripping the folded document like it might bite her. People moved around her in waves. Valets running, doors slamming, laughter echoing off marble. But none of it touched her. The gala was over. But her part in the story had ended long before this night. Eventually, she walked to the nearest bench just outside the building, heels aching, mascara starting to flake at the corners. Streetlights buzzed overhead. Her hand trembled as she finally opened the paper. Title: Transfer Confirmation. Lot number 472B. Previously leased by Soulbridge Holdings. Now sold in full to Bridgecore Redevelopment Group. Redevelopment commencement. 6 months from date of signing. Estimated demolition date. September 18th. She stared at the words. Demolition. Demolition. It wasn't a mistake. The address was hers. The one she still lived in. The one she thought was her safety net. Her "at least I still have this card." Only she didn't. Because while she kept the house, he had kept the ground it stood on. And now the ground had new owners. She let out a shaky breath that came out more like a wheeze. She wanted to scream, to rip the document in half, to go back in time and unsay that one sentence. "My life would be easier without you." But it was too late. It had echoed, and he'd listened. What she thought was a moment of cruelty had become a blueprint. She gave him permission and he built an exit. Not loud, not theatrical, not with slam doors or courtroom drama. With paperwork. She thought she knew him. She'd lived in the same house, ate the same dinners, shared the same bed for years. And somehow, she never saw the quiet fire behind those tired eyes. The man who vacuumed the stairs while she scrolled through travel blogs. The man who stopped asking questions and just started listening. Not because he was weak. Because he was waiting, planning, responding. The real twist wasn't that he disappeared. It was that she had assumed he never would. That she thought she could say anything, take anything, strip him down to dust, and he'd still be there the next morning with coffee and eggs and that stupid joke about burnt toast. But he wasn't there. And he wasn't coming back. She opened her phone. No new messages. No missed calls. Just an empty screen with a cracked corner she'd been meaning to fix. She scrolled through her contacts, stopped at his name. Still saved as Ron Redheart. Even though the heart had felt ironic for years. She tapped. Pressed message. Typed. Why did you do all this? Then deleted it. Because she already knew. He told her. He looked at her with the same calm he used to give the dog during thunderstorms. No rage. No revenge speech. Just one line. You wanted an easier life. I gave it to you. And he had. She didn't have to fight anymore. Didn't have to argue over groceries, or listen to him breathe too loudly at night, or pretend to care about the documentaries he watched. She had her space. She had her freedom. She just never imagined freedom would come with foreclosure. Not of the house. Of him. She went home that night and stood barefoot in the kitchen. Same tiles. Same counter. Same air. But everything felt temporary. The walls felt thinner. The rooms echoed. The silence now had weight. And on the dining table sat a letter from Bridgecore. It had arrived that morning. She hadn't opened it yet. Now she didn't need to.